Okay, now, right. Hello. Okay. Now, China's terms of trade, just give me a second. My hands free. I hope my hands free are working fine. Can you all hear me clearly? Right. Right. Okay. Fine. Great. Perfect. So if it's clear, then let's get started. I'll figure this out later on something. Okay. Now, China's terms of trade index fell from 102.1 in March 2018 to 99.7 in April 2018, right? State how the terms of trade are measured and explain three possible causes of a fall in the China's terms of trade shown above. So the first thing, as you can clearly tell by the wording of the question, you need to define what terms of trade is, right? Right. We are coming to that. But Zwan, let's go step by step. So first of all, you need to define what terms of trade actually is. Terms of trade is a formula, right, that calculates the relation between the prices of a country's exports, right, that calculates the relation between the price of country's exports and its imports, right? Are we good on this, right? So the first thing that you did in your answer is to define what terms of trade actually is. Terms of trade is a formula or a calculation that compares a country's export prices with its import prices, right? Now, the next thing that you should ideally be writing is that you write the formula. So index of export prices divided by index of import prices. This is what the formula of terms of trade is, right? Now you have export prices of a country on top and you have index of import prices in the denominator. Now this is very important that you follow this correctly because obviously you can't mess up with the formula, right? So export prices are always in the numerator and import prices are in the denominator. Now another thing that you need to know, that index mean that it's not the price of one product. It's not the price of one product, students. It's price of all products that a country exports. So if a country exports 50, 100, 200, 300, whatever the number of exports are. So if Pakistan exports wheat, vegetables, fruit items, footballs, whatever Pakistan exports, you get a composite. What is index? Index is a composite number that reflects the overall prices of all the products that you export. Similarly, index of import prices means, this is, you don't have to write this in the question, right? It's not directly asked for, but for your understanding, it's very important, right? Similarly, the index of import prices is also a composite number showing the overall price level of your import. So if Pakistan imports oil, Pakistan imports what else? Machinery, right? And services, healthcare services. So all those products prices will be combined into a composite number, and that would be part of your index of import prices. Basket of goods that we import or basket of goods that we export. Absolutely correct. Very good. Okay, let's keep moving now, right? When a country's export prices rise in relation to its import prices, it is known as improvement in TOT, right? I mean, for terms, now this is very important. Another thing I want to tell you here, students, for terms in economics for which there is an already understood acronym. You know what an acronym is, right? So terms of trade, the short form of that is TOT, right? So now this is something that's already understood in economics. So you can definitely write this down, right, as terms of trade. But another good way to do that would be that you, first of all, in the first word, you write the complete form, terms of trade, and then you write in the brackets TOT. That in future, like in the later on in the answer, you'll be using the term TOT, right? And this is accepted. Similarly, for production possibility curve. Production possibility curve, PPC, is well understood. So for the first time, you write complete word, production possibility curve, and in the brackets, you write PPC. And later on in your answer, you can just go on by writing PPC. You don't need to write everything like the word in full form. Easy, but don't use acronyms or don't use short forms for other English words. Like between should be completely written as between. Don't write B/W, right? That makes no sense. Or with, without, some students write without like W/O. No, that's not acceptable. Please don't do that, right? Write the full form. but only for the acronyms that understood in, in economics, you can write the short form, right? Now, just give me a second. I'll be back real quick. I'm here. Just give me a second. Okay, students, can you hear me now? Okay, now what we are doing next is we are explaining that what improvement and deterioration, is, right? Zwan, I'll answer your question. Just give me a second. When a country export prices rise in relation to its import prices, it's known as improvement in terms of trade, and vice versa. When import prices are rising faster than export prices, that is known as deterioration, uh, deterioration in DOT. Easy. So now you have defined what terms of trade is, you have written the formula, and you've also mentioned the wording, like what is improvement, what is deterioration. Now the question was saying that there has been a deterioration. Now, please have a look at this. So when the value goes up, when the value goes up, TOT value goes up, that's improvement. And then the value goes down, that is deterioration. Easy, students, right? Because when would the value go up? Value will go up when export prices are rising faster, as I also mentioned in the statement, right? So when export prices are rising faster, that numerator value goes up and overall TOT values goes up. And that's improvement. You want your export to get you more revenue. Yes or no? Any country would want its export to be more valuable. It's as simple as that, right? And when your import prices are rising faster, that's deterioration, and that's something that's not desirable. Easy, any confusion, right? Now, after this, there's a question. I'll quickly answer that. Can you have this understanding that if terms of trade will improve, it will benefit, it will be beneficial for consumers as they will be able to buy more products, but it won't be to some extent good for economy as BOP will decrease, GDP will fall, unemployment will rise due to lower export if the PED exports are less than one. No, if the PED exports is more than one, everything else was correct, right? Everything else was correct, right? That if balance of payment is improving, that means your exports are more valuable, right? Right? So you get to earn more foreign exchange, right? But if your exports are more elastic, because less than one is less elastic, one, you make these small mistakes, and I'm afraid that you need to, yes. So if it's more elastic, inelastic is good, because I mean it's basic necessity. So if it's inelastic, we are exporting wheat, right? And wheat is a food item, and that's inelastic. So no matter how much expensive wheat gets, I mean, we don't really care, right? People will still buy it. And always try to relate these concepts with the real life. Russia has been imposed crazy sanctions, right? The entire world has almost the entire world has, banned Russian products. They have stopped doing business with Russia and everything. But what economic weapon Russia has? Russia is the main supplier of oil, gas to Europe. Now, if Russia gets to cut that, which it already has, then Russia doesn't really care, right? It can create a lot of pressure, right? So for countries that export products with inelastic demand, less than one, so they don't really care if their exports are getting expensive. In fact, they like it, right? Because they get to earn more revenue, right? But for more elastic, like if you're exporting something like consumer good, and that consumer good could be imported from China, India, other countries, then Pakistan is in trouble, right? Because then higher prices mean that other countries might not buy from us, and instead they might buy from cheaper countries. Easy, we're good. We'll keep moving, right? Political things in paper. I mean, not something that is a sensitive matter. I mean, it's not technically political, right? So you can just say, don't say that you're kind of any way have a sympathy for Russia, because you can't afford to do that, right? But I mean, other things you can, just like you can say that Gulf countries export oil and they don't really care if prices of exports are going up if the price of oil is going up and they are benefiting out of it. So I mean, things like that is perfectly fine, right? But not this conflict thing, because that's a sensitive thing. You got my point? Okay, students, let's keep moving forward. Now comes the main part. Now the main part says that what are three possible reasons why the country's terms of trade might have fallen? Yes or no, right? Now let's get started here, right? Now the first could be, right, the import prices are rising. Chinese the prices of products. The first simple explanation could be that China is importing are rising fast, right? Now, what could be the reason? Now, you also have to explain. You cannot just identify. You also need to explain, right? Now, if your terms of trade has fallen from 102.1 to 99.7, that means it's a deterioration. What could be a reason? I did tell you. So if index of import prices is going up, so if the index of import prices is going up, that's one reason why your terms of trade is deteriorating. So that clearly shows that your import prices are rising faster. Now, what could be a reason for that, right? There are, for instance, price of fuel is rising, which is an inelastic good. And so China needs to import it no matter what. Okay, now so think about this. What I'm saying here is that usually what happens when the import prices increase, how do consumers respond to it, right? So when import prices are increasing, consumers respond to it by, cutting on their demand. But in some cases, what we were talking about right now, you can't afford to do that because those are inelastic goods, right? So in Pakistan's case, what people are, criticizing and everything, our exchange rate is deteriorating and everything, but we spend a big amount of money in buying imported oil. Now, oil is more expensive. We have to spend more on buying oil, and that means more supply of our currency. And more supply of our currency means that we have weaker exchange rate. This is making sense or not? Right? Right? Okay, so Zuhan, the question is clearly asking us to explain three possible causes of fall in China's terms of trade, right? Now, what effect it has, now students, this is very important. Now, it did not ask us to explain the effects. If you want to explain the effects, that would be a little, irrelevant. I mean, it's no harm, but don't write something that's kind of irrelevant initially. Initially, just write things that are directly related to the question being asked. And the question here just says three possible causes, right? So what are possible causes of the fall, right? Right? Okay. Now the causes we have already mentioned, that product prices, the price of products that China imports, right, is importing are rising fast. For instance, the price of fuel is rising, might be rising. Fuel might be rising because we're not just talking about the present time. We are talking generally, they might be rising, and which is inelastic good, and so China needs to import it no matter what, right? That's one thing, right? Then another thing could be weaker exchange rate, right? Right? So if you have weaker exchange rate, let me just quickly think about this. So that means China has to give more units of its currency to buy imports, right? So for China, right, you have to pay more Chinese yuan to buy those imports. And for, exports, you are getting less in return, right? Is it making sense? Students, have a look at this. Now, what is weaker exchange rate? Now, think about this clearly. Weaker exchange rate is when you need more units of local currency to buy the same unit of foreign currency, right? So you have a dollar, right? So let's say previously $1 used to buy 5 yuan, right? 5 yuan. Right? Now, $1 gets to buy you like 10 yuans, right? Now, in this situation, which currency became stronger and which currency became weaker, right? So you can clearly see for yourself that yuan is the one that's becoming weaker and dollar is the one that's becoming stronger. Easy, we got on this, right? Now, think about this. with weaker exchange rate, if anything was previously worth and is still worth $1, right? Previously, China had to give only 5 yuan to buy that thing, right? Now China has to pay 10 yuan to buy that same $1 good, right? So for China, it's paying more units of its local currency to buy that same product. Is it making sense or not, right? So it's import prices, right, in local currency, import prices in local currency is increasing, right? Import prices, right? In foreign currency, it's the same, right? Students, are you following me or not? In local currency, right? Sorry about the writing, right? Is it making sense, right? And on the other hand, what's happening that your exports are now less valuable. How so? So let's say if something was worth 5 yuan, previously you used to get $1 in exchange for selling that 5 yuan good. Now with this exchange rate, you will get how many dollars to export that same thing, right? Now you'll get 0.5 cents, sorry, $0.5, half a dollar to export that same 5 yuan thing. Are you getting me or not? Right? So in terms of Chinese currency, in terms of foreign currency, you are receiving less dollars. Yes or no? With weaker exchange rate, right? So your export prices are now less, you are receiving less dollars, right? And for your imports, you are paying more yuan. Yes or no? Is this making sense or not? Students, any confusion so far? Right? Menel, are you getting me? Right? Okay. Now, what comment do we have? Domestic firms are less, very good, excellent. Domestic firms are less competitive, which will cause the consumer, exactly. Now, that's another very good point, which will depreciate the exchange rate, causing terms of trade to fall. Right, exactly. That's another good point, right? So another, just a second, right? So another thing that Zohan mentioned, another reason for a decrease, right? Now let's first write this down and then we'll move forward here. Weaker exchange rate, right? With weaker exchange rate, you don't need to write ER, right? The full form, but I'm just writing in short form right now in the class, right? With weaker exchange rate, the Chinese need to pay more in local currency by the same price product from a foreign country, causing China to pay more for its imports. Causing China to pay more for its imports, and it will receive less dollars. So we are just referring to dollars as, foreign currency. Could be any foreign currency, not just dollars, obviously. And it will receive less dollars, foreign currency, in exchange for its exports, hence reducing the value of its exports. Yes or no? Reducing, a better word than value would be price, reducing the price of its exports, right? So that's another reason why this deterioration might have happened. Then another thing that's very important. Over time, China's exports might have, this is what Johan referred, might have become less competitive in relation to other countries exporting same things. Now, what we are trying to say here, right? Now, Pakistan, again, I was reading it in the newspaper, and I think it's obviously genuine news, right? That Pakistan, again, is exporting footballs for the Qatar World Cup, Qatar Soccer Football Cup, right? Now, if on the other hand, during this time, another country would have produced better quality footballs at more reasonable prices or whatever, right? Then obviously the country, like whoever, football association, federal soccer association, whatever it is, I don't know, right, would have preferred to buy imports from that country rather than Pakistan. Are you getting it or not? Right? So this thing being said, right, So this thing being said, right? So what we're trying to say that the demand for your products, if your demand for your exports is falling, right, then your prices are expected to fall because demand is less, prices will be low, and overall, when index of export prices is less, we know that terms of trade value will decrease. This is making sense or not, right? Would an increase in the rate of inflation in trading partners while the domestic remain will lead to a deterioration as the price of imports will rise. Okay, now Minal, let's break what you said. Now, you are saying that an increase in the rate of inflation in trading partners, while the domestic rate remains the same, lead to deterioration of the TOT as the price of imports would rise. Okay, now your wording is a little unclear, Minal. So let's put it down like this. I would say, or what is correct is basically when your rate of inflation is higher, and correct me if I'm saying what you wanted to say. If your country's inflation rate is relatively higher compared to other countries who export the same thing, I repeat myself. If your country's domestic rate of inflation is higher compared to other countries who export the same thing, let's say Pakistan and Bangladesh. Bangladesh exports textiles, Pakistan export textiles, but a lot of business of Pakistani textiles has been taken by Bangladesh. Why? Because in the past few years, our rate of inflation has been very high. So the same product that we export is more expensive, and the same quality product that Bangladesh is exporting to other countries is relatively cheaper. So from importing countries' point of view, which product would you prefer? Won't you prefer Bangladeshi product because that's relatively cheaper, right? So if our country's domestic rate of inflation is higher, our products become less competitive, right? And their demand decreases. Exactly what I was saying over here, right? Might have become less competitive, and in this, you could have written that could be because of local rate of inflation higher than other countries exporting same product, right? So you can talk about, so now in this situation, Zohan and other students, right? So in this situation, you could have mentioned that, Pakistan, Bangladesh example, because this is the real example, right? It's not something that I'm making up, right? This has happened in the past, recently, right? That we have lost a lot of our textile business to Bangladesh because their domestic rate of inflation is lower than ours, right? So this is what you could have given an example for. Then the next thing that you have said here, let me read your comment. Can we use the concept of trade protection in answer like the China joining the trade bloc which will remove the tariff with member countries, which will cause the export prices, Minal, did I answer your question? Which will cause the export prices to fall due to no tariff, leading the terms of trade to fall and vice versa, non-trade bloc. Okay, let's look at this one more time. So Zohan is saying China has joined a trading bloc. We know what trading bloc is, that when you get to trade freely with your member countries. Okay, so China would need to remove tariff. Agreed, correct. Country, so with member countries, which will cause the export prices to fall. Okay, so Zohan, what you are saying that when you join a trading bloc, you remove tariffs. So tariffs are on what? Tariffs are on imported goods. So if imported goods are now cheaper because there are no tariffs now, then don't you think that your terms of trade should improve rather than deteriorate? Let's look at this one more time, right? So previously, China used to import something from USA for $10 and it had tariff imposed on that. So the final price used to perhaps become $12 because there was 20%, that thing imposed, tariff being imposed, right? So something China was importing from USA, right? And that was, let's say, $10, right? Now, and previously, obviously, we know that there was tariff, right? There's no way China can get into a trading bloc with USA, but I'm just giving you an example, right? Original price was $10, then there was a tariff of 20%. So the product used to be sold for $12, equivalent of $12, like you can convert it in Chinese currency in China. Now, when you join a trading bloc, this thing would be gone because you can directly import the product directly import the good in China without tariff. Now, when your import prices are decreasing, right? So the denominator, right? So import prices, your denominator is going down, right? And assuming that your numerator stays the same, then don't you think that your overall prices, I had to write, that overall your, that thing, terms of trade will improve. Students, are you getting me? Right? So export X stands for exports in economics and M stands for imports, right? Easy. Is it making sense? Tariffs is removed on both sides, no? So when tariff is removed, yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So when you're exporting your products to USA, now they're not subject to tariff. Again, your export prices are falling. No, but I mean, think about it. That's not the value that you are getting. Johan, I totally get your point, but think about this. Okay, now that's a good point, Johan. I'm only answering it to you because other students might get confused unnecessarily, right? So you were exporting something worth 100 yuans in China, equivalent to $10 in India, sorry, in USA. Easy. Is this clear? Right? Now, you were getting $10. China was getting $10, right? Now, on top of it, whatever tariff USA has imposed on China, let's say 20%, so that used to sell for $12 in USA. That used to sell for $12 in USA with 20% tariff imposed on Chinese goods. Easy. Now, when you join a trading block with USA and the tariffs are removed and everything, so that would now be selling for $10 in USA. But the price that China gets for its products is not any different compared to what it was before. Ron, did you get this point, right? So China still used to get, right? China still used to get same $10, right? Whereas for the imports, how is that different? Even for the imports, I mean, the price that consumers are paying is different, right? Yeah, no, but that in that case, it will make a difference because import prices would include the tariff as well. Yeah, but not for the export prices. Juan, did you get this part? I mean, I know it's very tricky, but let's look at this one more time. Students, think about this. With tariffs being imposed or removed, what it will affect is only your import prices, not your export prices. Why? Because import prices is what your consumers pay. When a product is coming in and previously there was tariff, so that used to make your import prices higher. Easy? Any confusion so far? Right? So if I'm importing something from Japan, Pakistan, a car from Japan, and Pakistan has imposed tariff on that, I'm not only paying the original price, I'm also paying the tariff on top of it, right? So my import price will be higher. On the other hand, when Pakistan used to export something for, let's say, 1 lakh rupees to USA, and it had no tariff. Now, we used to get equivalent of 1 lakh rupees, whatever, let's say $1,000. We used to get $1,000 for the thing that we used to export. Now, USA has imposed tariff on Pakistani products. So their consumers are not paying $1,000. Their consumers are paying $1,200. But those $200 tariff that they're paying on Pakistani good is going to whose pocket? It's going to whose pocket? USA government. It's not coming to us. Yes or no? Did you get this part? Zuhan, did you get this part? Oh, right? Students, are you getting me? Okay, so Zohan, I think you dropped out of the call. Okay, so students, I'm ending the class. Rejoin with the same link. We'll quickly, we'll continue with this question. This class is about to end. I'm rejoin and then we'll continue from where we are leaving right now.